Finally, to manipulation techniques. So now you can take it one way that, you know, this is what to learn how to recognize and call out or avoid, or, you know, you can, you know, learn some tricks on how to manipulate people. That's really, so based on your decision I can affect that. So please choose the first option. It's just one technique. It's a very fun technique. Because it doesn't require you to do something. It's sneaky because you don't do anything. It's omission. Have you ever heard the word omission? Yes?
When we don't include something.
Yes, it is leaving something out. It's very simple. It's maybe sometimes the more important thing is what's not getting reported. And I can recommend one show in particular. It's also a comedian making news, because nowadays you can only make news digestible if it's comedy. So, but it's, you know, serious. Is for those of you who are maybe interested, it's called Redacted Tonight. Do you know what's redaction? R-E-D-A-C. What is it? Can somebody define it? What does it mean to redact something? Because after all, one of the words for the person who works at the news is redactor, at least in some languages. So what is redact?
Not from redaction.
No, it's not redact, it's redact. It does A instead of U. It means like take like a black marker and blacken stuff out. So that is to redact. So there's a show which is called Redacted Tonight, and they are showing redacted news, like news that has been left out specifically, and that's also like comedy channel similar to what John Oliver is doing. So it's actually quite fun to watch and depressing at the same time. But you know, that's a good source, I think, I would say, for like things that normal media outlets omit. Of course, John Oliver and Daily Show and used to be Colbert Report were shows that also did that, you know, looking for things that not only like stupid things that the people said in the news, but also things that, you know, they maybe should have talked about but didn't. So that's one of the things. Though it's important to remember from the beginning, if they omit something, it's not always direct manipulation that they intended. Sometimes they just don't have the time for it. So sometimes it's not intentional, sometimes it's unintentional, but still, if you want to manipulate the news, that's how you can do it, you can omit. Another fun thing is framing. If you look at it, and first, look at just the left part. What do you see? So maybe someone who's closer, tell someone who's farther away, what is on the left? It's a great thing on the left. Yes?
So it's a soldier with a gun, here's what I see. He has the gun to the person's head.
Okay, now look just to the right. Yes?
There's another soldier who's giving water to the injured person. And,
yes, and now you can tell me what's in the middle. Both. Yes, both. So that's framing illustrated in a nutshell. Framing is that you take the whole thing and you cut out just a part of it. So that's like the most simple example is visual. You can do it literally with the photography. You edit the photography. It's not Photoshop or anything. It's just, you know, let's present just one side, literally, just one side of the story when reality is complex. But it can be done abstractly. It can be done just like with a story. It doesn't have to be picture. You can just tell a certain aspect of a story. Or you can tell a story and based on what you say before you tell it, you change how people understand it. So it's essentially what you do around the edges of what you say. It's a selection kind of thing. It's which part you select. Because, you know, that's, you know, word that's used with media manipulation is selectiveness. You're selective. You select just certain things. You have to do it anyway because you don't have unlimited time again, so some selection is necessary. But other than that, it could be manipulative selection. So it's not simple, it's not difficult. Like most of the manipulation techniques are actually not difficult, but they're just sneaky. They work with things outside of what you see. Because this sort of like propaganda, when like country tries to make look themselves great or something, that's super obvious and it has never really worked because people are not that dumb. They can tell if it's something they see and it's actively, you know, silly or actively untrue, then they can see it. So it's generally more effective if instead of telling a lie, you just leave out something that you don't want people to hear. It's something that's very difficult to notice because you have to go look somewhere else for the context. You have to go to other source to find the rest because the news will not give you the rest. The one more complicated one is sometimes what happens if somebody is abusing sort of doctrine of news that for a very long time is actually even people who do actual journalism, they sort of follow this, and that's the idea of balance or media being completely neutral. Do you think it's possible to be completely neutral?
No.
Probably not, it's safe to say. Every human being has what's called a bias. Every organization has some kind of bias. But, you know, some try, and let's assume that they are succeeding to a great extent, to be balanced in their reporting. What does it mean to be balanced? How can you balance a report?
To show both perspectives.
Exactly. And when is it a problem? When is it manipulative that you show both sides of a problem?
When you tell you do, but you don't really do it.
That's one way, but what if you actually do it? You show both sides of the problem and you're manipulating people by that. Because it's possible, yes?
When you show the good side and the bad side, it doesn't matter that you show the two sides because you will manipulate people to choose the good side because you will show the bad side as well.
But that's the framing. Let's say you present both, but you frame it in a particular way, but it's something slightly different.
They can add more information to the side they like. For example, they can.
But that's unbalanced. Balance means equal time and equal space to both sides, and it can still be manipulative, which is really weird.
Well, if like one side is the side of our government and the other is an enemy, then...
Well, yes, but again, that's framing. Because you choose the sides for...
Like you've chosen the side, they're not the enemy. Like they can't know it will happen.
Yeah, well, exactly. What you're saying, because I'm just saying, to not confuse the techniques or terms, the whole idea of friend and enemy, that's a framing technique. Because you frame someone as your enemy. That's not actually a side. That's you create that side. But yes, it can be presented as, you know, both sides and one side is made up. It could be that. But that's more framing than this. Because, okay, example, it's actually same time for both sides of who actually exist, and there are people who are, you know, objectively or honestly representatives of those two sides, and you present it in that way and it's still manipulative. What's the catch? The catch would be, yes?
Which is the first and which is the
Could
second.
be, but that's again the framing. That's like one of the subtle things you can do, like the order of things is still belongs to the category of framing.
If it's something like a very bad event that someone did, like, purging the Jews for something, and when you listen, you get prejudiced against the...
Again, framing, because that's like how you tell it. This is all framed. What it is, and I will not tease you any longer because this is subtle, is when you give 50% of time to two sides that are not actually 50-50.
Yeah.
So you give equal space to a side that can be representative of like 1% of people in reality. Examples in real world, and John Oliver again did a funny segment to show how stupid it is. If you're fair and balanced, for instance, about climate change, when you're representing two sides of the issue, which are, well, the two basic opinions that you can have about climate change in relationship to humans. Yes?
It can be from one perspective, like, if it actually is happening or not.
Yes.
But it could be like the rich countries who come out saying they like protect the environment, and the non-rich ones who want or causing more issues because they didn't cause before.
Yeah, sure. That's sort of moving it slightly to like the framing territory again. But yes, the basic idea is just factual, objective sides. Well, some believe it's happening, some believe it's not happening. Some believe people are causing it, some believe people are not causing it. And those are actual sides. You can get actual people who believe those actual things, and you can give them 50-50 amount of time, because those are the two sides. But if you look at scientific consensus, if you had to say in percent, So how many % of scientists who are climatologists believe that it is happening? Approximately.
85.
It would be actually over 90 probably. So then when John Oliver tried to demonstrate, to make it actually representative, then he invited one person who's like, or he like was still fake, was actor, it doesn't matter. Like one person was like, okay, this is a person who believes that climate change is not happening, and now let's bring like proportional ratio, 95 and 99 other experts who believe that it is actually happening. So that's to demonstrate how the fallacy works, which is a psychological fallacy. It's called false dichotomy. That you're trying to push people to believe that there are two sides when there are more sides, maybe, that's another problem. Or when you pretend that two sides are balanced. It's very applicable in debating, because in debating you have sides. And one of the failures of debating is that sometimes it makes people think in this way, that there are two sides always and they're equal. It's not actually the truth. Like for instance, if you had a debate about whether a Holocaust ever happened, like would you even give the space to that single person who would say that it didn't on television? That even gets into the territory of maybe we should limit free speech, because you could say that some positions are not only minority but actively dangerous.
And there will not be a debate about this. No, this didn't happen. Perhaps for the results there would be one, or for some.
No, some people would debate it, but it didn't happen. Yeah, that's the thing. So you can have, realistically, you can have a TV show where if you're balanced, you will have a Holocaust denier and a Holocaust believer, and you would say, these are the two sides, choose for yourselves. When, of course, not only is the Holocaust denier represents a vast minority, that's one problem, but also there is such a thing as being objectively in error. Or, you know, being clearly biased or clearly have an agenda. So, that's the problem. So that's one way of manipulating that most people can't identify, because this is really subtle. So the real important thing is, if you're giving equal space to two representatives of two other opposite ends of an idea, and give them equal time, it should be in a situation where they deserve equal time. So that's one of the, even honest journalists have sometimes tendency to do this kind of error. And finally, something more modern that also affects you without you knowing it, probably 100%. That's called search bubble, which is here in the description. What do you think it might be? Search bubble. What if I told you that you're stuck in a search bubble? You're the hacker, so maybe you would say. No, there's no one else right now. So.
Well, you can search for a topic and you think, oh, now I know a lot about it, but you're searching the sources all from one place, so you didn't really search, you just...
No, that's part of the problem. Like, you shouldn't trust Google like religiously, because like recently, like after I actually finished this presentation, discovered there's a recent body of studies that shows that Google is probably influencing about 70% of elections worldwide, whether they want to or realize it or not. Because, you know, people, when they look at Google search results, they generally look at the first result and believe that's the most accurate because it's first. Why else would it be first if it wasn't the best option? So maybe they look at the first two. To some extent, maybe the rest of the first page. Nobody will look at the rest of the other pages. Almost nobody, maybe 1% of people. But even like the difference between looking at just the first two and looking at the rest would be all like maybe 10–15% would look at the rest, but like 85% would look only at the first two. So that's one thing. Google is manipulative because inherently, it's like you cannot make the search engine that doesn't do this, because it's just how it works, and people came to accept it as fact. You know, this is just facts. It's Google, it's facts. But yeah, it's selected. It's still selected, and it's dangerous in that way. But the more important problem is if you're like on the social media, let's say Facebook. Who are you connected to on Facebook? Yes?
People with similar ideas, so all you hear is the one you believe in.
Yes. So the other way to call it is called echo chamber. You surround yourself on the internet, and even Google does this because it, through cookies, remembers your past searches. So you surround yourself in a bubble confirming your belief. And that's how you can exist on the internet, the greatest repository of knowledge in the human history, and still believe that, you know, vaccines cause autism, and you know that I don't know, some other example that for instance Scientology is the best religion slash psychological therapy clinic group. Because you, based on what you're searching and what you prefer to click at, in time, those will be the vast majority of all of the results that you will be getting. On social media sites, it's more even worse. Social networks are even personally limited. So your Facebook feed is giving you what?
What you subscribe to.
Yes, the feeds of people you subscribe to, which are, you know, in their framework, are friends. Like, why would you have on Facebook as friends people who share diametrically opposed beliefs or care about vastly different things? Maybe if they're members of your family, but that would be about it, and then like it's like, be still the same without Facebook. But you will probably select also, you know, the group of people to which you want to belong, and they will probably have similar opinions as you. So, like, I am aware of that, and I'm not you know, not trying to manipulate, you know, my feed so that it just, you know, it's more diverse and just, you know, functioning normally, but just being careful. But still, even because I just do debating, like my feed is mostly like I wouldn't know that racism exists, other than, you know, from critical videos about racism that I get in the feed, because none of the people that, or very little percentage, few people of like the groups that I associate with share or hold that worldview. So I will not be, you know, I will not get in contact with it very much. And then, of course, this is a negative example, shall we say, but there are a bunch of other things that I probably don't know about at all that are positive that will not get to me because the people in my group, on my social network, don't care about them. And I might be interested, but it's not something that you're actually going to discover on the internet if you're searching through search engines or if you're watching feeds on social networks. So I just wanted to really stress that because that's very important for you specifically, and it's really difficult to notice. Like, after you know about it, it's very simple to notice because, you know, that you see it really everywhere. But really be careful about that, because that's not very good for, you know, education or personal growth. It's, you know, just closing yourselves, locking yourselves in an echo chamber of your own ideas and preferences, because you need to be challenged. Right. So now, what's actually the good process, good journalism? Some things to identify at the end. Let's give you just a few rules. Ethical codex of journalism. In most countries, there will be some organization that's devoted to this. And a lot of actual journalists in the world, well, that's the thing. That's probably how you can identify an actual journalist, that they follow these rules. Other than they try to inform, they're also doing it in a particular way. So for instance, citation of multiple sources. Why is it important? Why do you need more sources than one? Produce
More perspectives of different people.
Sure. Also, something else?
Sources are, each source is created by people, and they can be 100% objective.
That's one thing. Objectivity is one thing, but it's also about something else.
We have to compare many sources in order to see if fact is real.
Yes, so about accuracy. So about accuracy and objectivity. And the sources should be of a certain quality. Like once I did an analysis of like Czech serious newspaper, and I looked at their story, which was like looked like from it's called yellow journalism. It's like looked like really, you know, fluff piece, and it was from Bulvar. It's called Bulvar in Czech Republic. Always tabloids, yeah, tabloids in English. So it looked like that kind of story, and then I looked at the end. There were multiple sources, but those multiple sources, it's like that like serious newspaper actually used the sources reporters of 2 tabloid news outlets. So there you have it. Like, okay, it's multiple, it's 2, but you know, it's 2 tabloids, so maybe not that great. And that's what I talked about. It's similar to the ads masquerading as articles. Clear distinction of fact and opinion, because generally there's a difference between fact stories in news and opinion pieces in news. What's the difference? It's not a trick question, it's easy.
Well, it's again about being objective.
Yes. So, like, what do you need to distinguish?
facts should be objective
Yes.
and opinions cannot be objective
Yes.
because it's my opinion, so it's subjective.
Right. So yes.
You also separate, like, in my opinion.
Yes, yes, yes. So it has to be clearly distinguished because then some people may take opinion as fact, and then you get those things like vaccines cause autism, or global warming is not happening because I believe this person's opinion. So that's how to get this negative effect. If it's not clearly distinguished. Then other one is respecting the presumption of innocence. Where does this take effect today? Because that's basic principle, one of the basic principles of justice. Why is it important in journalism? Or how would it look if a news article did not respect presumption of innocence? How would the news article look if it was not respecting this? Any idea? It's actually like there's a criminal case, that people get very angry about, and you could present the person as if he already was certainly convicted. As if, okay, look, the article about a murder, for instance, instead of a murder suspect or someone on trial. So that's a vastly important distinction. Today, more current example would be, and I know that some people, for understandable reasons, hate that it's being called out as what it is, and that's and nothing against this group of people. It's called feminists, and nothing against them. But there is one particular problem. If there's like a person who's accused of, say, rape, and he's treated as a rapist already before they are convicted. So that is supremely damaging to the personal life of the person because they might be a person who's actually done something, but that's why we have justice system. So that we don't have, because like what otherwise it would be, the clinical or technical term would be witch hunt. Then it would be, like, look, a witch, we need to burn the witch. And that doesn't matter what is the accusation, though some are more damaging than others, especially sexual offenders. If somebody's accused of a sexual offense, if you already paint them in the news as a guilty person, then it could completely ruin their life. So even if they're then acquitted, because then it doesn't matter, because everybody knows them as a person who was a sexual offender, even though he was not convicted. So as far as the society can tell, he's not guilty. Because of course, yes, sometimes trials don't actually discover the truth of the issue, but we have set up a system that mostly does this. So we kind of have to rely on it in that way. And that has been a core principle of journalism for a very long time. But now with social media, it's under attack by various groups who use social media for essentially lynching, for like publicly shaming people. So that's very dangerous and current. And then of course it's very related, protecting the identity of minors. What does that mean? Exactly what it says, which is yes.
Don't put the below 18 on pictures without that.
Yes, yes. So that's why you have pixelated images of faces, and why you don't mention names of people who are, even if they are actually, in most countries, even if they are actually found guilty of a crime like a sex offense, they still shouldn't be specifically named or their faces shown, because the idea is that's why we have generally special conditions of punishment for minors or young people, because the idea is that they're not fully mature. Or
if it's a suspect for a crime, why should he be included as well, or should be added? Like, when he's going on for the trial and you can see his face.
Well, no, sometimes the trials are held in such a way that the identity is actually kept hidden. In some countries there are specific laws about it.
When it doesn't happen, I guess it applies in the third rule.
Which, you mean the presumption of course, that definitely, but this would apply even if they're guilty. Like there should be special consideration for people who are young. Even like it's like
I'm not talking about young, in general, someone is suspected.
Sure, that's the third rule. Third rule applies equally to everyone. The fourth rule is a specific condition when it's a minor, it's someone who's like, I don't know, 12 or something. Then even if they're guilty of, say, murder or sex offense, they shouldn't be publicly, shown their face and mention their name. Because in theory, they are not matured yet, so there's some difference between them and an adult offender in that way. And also it's a difference whether you completely ruin future life of someone and essentially deny them the ability to rehabilitate if they're, I don't know, 50 and if they're 12. because they will have to live with that stigma for much, much longer. There are people who would say, yeah, they deserve it. And sure, that's an opinion that people can have. But it's not the foundational principle of journalism. So then you're doing something else, as is what I would say. And it has different names and it's a different thing. In Italian it would be maybe it's called, because that's the name if you heard, social justice warriors. And maybe you can call yourself a social justice warrior or something else that's essentially a kind of vigilante, like superhero. So maybe you can think of yourself as not as a journalist but as a superhero. It's fine, it's up to you. But it's not journalism if you're not protecting the identity of minors in all circumstances. When the news can be damaging to them in any way. And then, of course, not inciting hate or violence. Why is that important? Any ideas? Why shouldn't a news article say let's, these people are stupid, let's go beat them up and steal their stuff?
Because it's against so many laws.
Yeah, it's against a whole bunch of laws. Yeah.
Because with a simple you can make harsh conflicts between the parts of society.
Yeah, so because
it's more ethical groups.
Yeah, it's also more abstract. It's not just but that's why it says hate and not just violence. It's not just specific instruction to commit a crime because. Yeah.
And after a time, the hate and the violence in the journalism destroy the facts.
What do you mean? I can't hear you very well.
The hate and the violence in journalism after a time destroy the facts.
Yes, so
the audience don't care about the facts, yes. Just the hate.
Hate is it's just like the opinion you put on a fact. So
because the thing is, it's not illegal to hate someone. It's an opinion, but it's difference between saying oh, I really hate this thing, and nothing else, and saying, oh, I really hate this group of people and everybody else should too. So there's the line. You can have present your opinion, fine, but you shouldn't be telling other people, because that's your power in the news. You shouldn't be telling other people to also hate someone else, because then it all frequently leads to violence and all sorts of other negative effects. So thank you for being so patient and active during my presentation. And I think this basic questions kind of thing we've covered already. Maybe you have time for one question if somebody has a question, specifically before lunch. But I think we look like we want to go to the lunch. So don't worry, we're on schedule. So now it's on to the lunch. So thank you.